Ever feel like you're watching one of those tightrope walkers at the circus? Like, will they, won't they?
Holding your breath the whole time.
Exactly. That's kind of where Intel's at right now. They've got billions, and I mean billions, in subsidies for building new chip factories.
Yeah, everyone's lining up to hand them money to build these things.
But the ground they're walking on, maybe not as solid as you'd think. We're going to unpack that today.
We're going deeper than the headlines, that's for sure.
Exactly. Why is Intel making this bet, and what's the real story everyone's missing? That's our deep dive today.
It's a little like, imagine you're training for a marathon. Got the fancy shoes, the sponsor deals, feeling good.
Yeah, you're on top of the world.
Then it hits you. You might have signed up for the wrong race entirely. The wrong terrain, the wrong competition.
And you're already halfway through training. Oof. Well, we're tapping into a really insightful article from a Chinese publication, actually. They're giving us this inside track on Intel's strategy.
It's fascinating because they've managed to snag somewhere between $200 and $300 billion in subsidies globally. Countries are practically begging them to build these factories.
Yeah, the U.S., Israel, maybe Germany soon. It's huge.
Huge is an understatement.
Yep.
But here's the catch, and our source lays this out really well, some of these factories. They're being built as, get this, fab shells.
Fab shells. Okay, so not fully operational right away.
Not even close. They're meeting the bare minimum requirements to get that sweet, sweet government cash, but holding back on all the really expensive equipment that actually makes the chips.
So they're kind of like buying a car without an engine yet. Risky move.
Intel's under a lot of financial pressure right now. The PC market, which is their bread and butter, it's shrinking.
Everyone's going for those smartphones and tablets instead.
Plus, data centers are changing, demanding different kinds of chips. And those cutting-edge chips Intel wants to make, not cheap.
So these subsidies, they're like a quick cash injection. Eases the pressure temporarily, but...
But now the clock is ticking to make these factories actually churn out profits.
And they've got to do that by filling them with really expensive equipment that they haven't even bought yet.
It's a high-stakes gamble. They're essentially saying, we're betting future demand will be so huge, we'll need all this extra capacity.
It's like buying a luxurious kitchen, all countertops and cabinets. But no oven, no fridge, not even a sink. You're just banking on really wanting to cook someday.
Exactly. And what's even more interesting is that Wall Street, they're not entirely convinced. Our source mentions that after Intel announced this massive subsidy deal, their stock price barely moved.
So investors aren't jumping for joy. Makes you wonder what they see that maybe Intel is missing.
Well, there's one word that hangs over everything. TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They've become the superstars of the chip-making world.
I've heard the name, but give us the rundown.
While Intel designs and manufactures their own chips, TSMC focuses solely on the manufacturing part. They make chips designed by other companies, and they've pulled ahead, technologically speaking.
So they're behind. Their chips aren't as good as TSMC's.
It's not just about good or bad. It's more about having the right tech at the right time. Think of it this way. Intel bet big on one type of manufacturing process for their chips.
Okay, so they put all their eggs in one basket. What's wrong with that? Everyone does that, right?
Sure, but what happened is the technology shifted. It's like they were betting on horseshoes when everyone else moved on to race cars.
And TSMC, they were building the race cars.
They saw the potential of smaller, more efficient chips, and that's what everyone wants now. Those are the chips that go into the latest phones, the fastest computers.
So Intel missed the boat.
They stumbled. It happens. But the tech world moves fast, and now they're playing catch-up. And that lag, it affects everything. Performance, power consumption,
Yeah.
everything.
So like my phone battery dying by lunchtime, that's on Intel.
Well, not entirely. But that's the kind of impact chip technology has. It's the difference between a phone that lasts all day and one that doesn't. It's the reason video games keep looking better and better. And crucially for Intel, it also impacts their bottom line because those advanced chips are more expensive to make.
Which explains why our source pointed out that even Intel's own CFO admitted they struggle to match TSMC's costs. And if you can't make it as cheaply, it's harder to compete.
Exactly. It's a tough spot to be in, no doubt. And this brings us to the million-dollar question, maybe the billion-dollar question. Can they turn things around?
They've got these half-built factories, billions of dollars on the line.
Right. Can they regain their tech advantage fast enough to actually make them profitable? Or will this blow up in their faces? That's what everyone's watching.
And there's another layer to this, right? Our source made a point about how Intel's approach to expansion is different from TSMC's. Something about customer demand.
Spot on. See, TSMC, they expand because they have companies lining up, practically begging them for more chips.
So like Apple needs more chips for iPhones, AMD needs more for their processors.
Exactly. The demand is there. It's tangible. They're like the hottest restaurant in town. People are happy to wait in line for a table.
Whereas Intel's building this massive restaurant, hoping people will show up once the doors open. Bold move.
It is bold.
Yeah.
TSMC, they built their empire by being the best at manufacturing, period. Anyone who designs chips, they go to TSMC to get them made.
Yeah.
It's called contract chip making.
Makes sense. But Intel?
They've always been about their own designs, their own products. They control the whole process, from design to manufacturing. That's what vertically integrated means.
Okay, so they're not just betting on catching up to TSMC's tech. They're betting they can sell their own chips. Even if they're not the absolute cheapest or the absolute best, they need customers, lots of them, to fill those factories.
Precisely. And that's why, going back to what we were discussing earlier, Wall Street is a little hesitant.
They're not convinced Intel can pull it off.
It's a big gamble. If Intel stumbles, if they can't make those factories profitable, it's not just their problem.
How so?
It could disrupt the entire global supply of chips. And that's where things could get messy for everyone.
Okay, hold on. Explain that to me like I'm 5. How does Intel's situation affect me, someone who just uses a laptop and a phone and stuff?
Imagine this. Suddenly, there aren't enough chips to make all the new phones, laptops, cars, even refrigerators. Everything that uses a chip, which is almost everything these days, it becomes more expensive, harder to find.
Oh, wow. I see where you're going with this. Like that whole supply chain mess we went through. Didn't realize Intel could play such a big role in that. It's not just about Intel itself, it's about the entire tech world. And even like national security depends on these chips. It's kind of wild when you think about it.
No, yeah, absolutely. And it really highlights how crucial this moment is for them. Those subsidies, they're a lifeline for sure. Buy them some breathing room, some time to figure things out. But the real challenge is just starting.
It's like they've climbed to the top of the high diving platform.
Yes.
Everyone's cheering. They got the funding. But did anyone check if there's even water in the pool below?
And now they've got the judges watching their every move. Investors, customers, competitors, all waiting to see if they can pull off this massive stunt.
So how do they stick the landing, besides inventing a time machine to get back in the race?
I mean, well, they got to nail the technology. That's priority number one. It's not just about catching up to TSMC either. It's about innovating, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in chip making.
Sounds kind of daunting.
It is. It's a massive undertaking. But even if they manage to crack that code, there's still another hurdle. They need buyers for these chips.
So they need to convince companies to ditch TSMC, come back to Intel.
In a nutshell, they need to rebuild trust, show the world they can be a reliable partner, deliver high-quality chips at a competitive price. It's a tall order.
2 huge challenges, then nail the tech, win back the trust. Our source seemed to imply that getting the money might have been the easy part. It's what Intel does next that really matters.
Absolutely. They've got the resources, now they need to execute. Can they transform themselves, adapt to this new reality? That's the billion-dollar question, and only time will tell.
A billion-dollar tightrope walk with the whole world watching. It makes you think, what would you do if you were in the CEO's shoes? Got these shiny new factories, billions of dollars, but fierce competition and an uncertain future. It's a nail-biter for sure. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but keep those brain gears turning because the story's far from over. Until next time, keep on diving.